Joshua is a book of fulfillment, particularly the fulfillment of God's promises. As Israel stands on the edge of the River Jordan, on the boundary of the Promised Land, we step into a book charting the fulfillment of God's promises made hundreds of years before to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. He promised them a land of their own, the land of Canaan. Now, how does God fulfill his promises? Well, firstly, God gives his people a new leader. Moses has died, and a new Moses is given, Joshua, to lead the people to obedience, victory, and rest. And in this, we've lots to learn about the kind of leaders that God provides for his people, not least the Lord Jesus, whose name, by the way, in Hebrew was Joshua, Jeshua, God saves. Secondly, God gives his people fresh courage. Whilst he terrifies his enemies, he strengthens his people. Be strong and courageous is the constant refrain throughout the whole book. And it's the obvious result of knowing that God will never leave you or forsake you. And again, as we see the likes of Joshua and Caleb stepping out into the breach, we'll learn lots of what courageous faith looks like. And by contrast, we'll see what cowardly living looks like too. Thirdly, God gives his people great victories. If God is fighting for his people, well, who can stand against them? Not the city of Jericho, not the city of Ai, not any other coalition or group of hostile kings or nations. And at this point, this also helps us make sense of some of the more distressing scenes in the book of Joshua. It's hard not to read some of the slaughter and not be shocked. But to remember that these are hostile nations with horrible practices helps us appreciate the actions of a holy God as he wipes out the unrepentant, but welcomes with open arms foreigners like Rahab or the Gibeonites, anyone who will make peace with him, who will make this God their God. And fourthly, last but not least, God gives his people the promised land. Bit by bit, the land he had promised them, he gave to them. Now for us, it would be fair to say that the middle sections of Joshua seem a little bit monotonous. It's been described as a map without pictures. But for an Israelite, these lists were momentous. A centuries-old promise was becoming clear and being kept before their very eyes. Now, in terms of structure, the book could be split into 4 big sections. Firstly, entering the land, chapters 1 through 5. Now, this reads like a new beginning for a new generation of Israelites in a new land. Secondly, taking the land. Chapters 6 through 12 is basically a long list of battles won and kings beaten as God fights for Israel. Thirdly, dividing up the land, chapters 13 through to 21. And in this map without pictures, the promised land is divvied up between the different tribes of Israel. And fourthly, living in the land, chapters 22 through 24. Joshua at this point is now very old and concerned for the future of Israel. As he rehearses God's covenant commitment to them, he recalls them and reminds them of their covenant commitment to him. He says this, "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve." And this ties up the theme of fulfillment in the book of Joshua. Whilst there is no question that God has fulfilled his promises to Israel, one question remains. Will Israel fulfill their promises to God? They say, "We will serve the Lord our God and obey him." But will they? Well, we'll have to wait until the book of Judges to see how that works out.